thank you all for coming. We are the JMM Gender Equity Association, a school club that focuses, as the name suggests, working towards gender equity, and Mel will talk about that a little later. But today we're going to be talking about how to register to vote, how to fill out a ballot, who is on the ballot, and all that good stuff for the upcoming November 3rd election. Mel, if you want to go to the next slide.
So as Amira kind of briefly touched on this, the Gender Equity Association is a social justice and political-oriented group that works to make Memorial High School and our surrounding community equitable in terms of marginalized gender identities and other identities. And we discuss policy, organizing protests, and current events. We've also done a lot of fundraising for various organizations and causes, lobbied for gender equity, and helped alter district policy. So yeah.
Yeah, so our first thing that we're going to do is registering to vote at the polls. So it is very important to note that the deadline for registering absentee has passed, so you are no longer able to register from your home. However, if you miss this deadline, no worries, you can still register at the polls. So we're going to walk through that process very quickly. Mel, if you could go to the next slide. So to register at the polls, you must provide a proof of residence. Basically, this is just to make sure that you are a US citizen, that you are eligible to vote, and that you live in Wisconsin. So you're going to bring what is called a voter ID. What this is a certain photo ID that the state approves as a voter ID. So if you see photo ID or voter ID on any website for looking at lists of what to bring, those are the same thing. Voter IDs are just very specific photo IDs. So there are numerous different IDs that you can bring to demonstrate your proof of residence and that you are eligible to vote, including but not limited to a driver's license issued by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, a U.S. passport, or a U.S. military document. We have the full list of voter IDs is right here on the screen. So if you want to take a snapshot to look at this list later, that would be fantastic. Once you get to the polls, you're going to fill out paperwork that asks your name, where you live, and other identifying information. And after you fill that in and submit it, then you can go and vote immediately. Poll workers there will help walk you through if you have any questions. They're super friendly and helpful and want to make the voting process as easy as possible. So it is very important to note that if you did not register absentee, you cannot vote absentee. The way it works in Wisconsin is that the polls aren't officially opening until until election day, and the deadline to request an absentee ballot was Thursday, October 29th. So while it is frustrating, that is just the way it works. Mel, you skipped a slide, I think.
Oops, I'm so sorry.
No worries. Yeah, so the deadline to request an absentee ballot is Thursday, October 29th. So after this date, you will have to vote in person. All right, so there are 3 easy steps for requesting an absentee ballot. Firstly, make sure you have a voter ID at hand. Then we're going to go to myvote.wi.gov and then follow the instructions on the website. So we're going to go into that in a little bit of detail. So firstly, make sure that you have a voter ID with you. So a voter ID a specific type of photo ID. So this could be a driver's license, a US passport, or a US military ID, to give some examples. It is not a specific card, but rather it is taken from a list of official photo IDs that have been issued by the federal and state government that the Wisconsin state government has approved to show that you exist and that you do live in Wisconsin. So if you want to see the full list of voter IDs, take a snapshot of this website and go there. So next, go to myvote.wi.gov. This is the Wisconsin government's website to help voters with all steps in the voting process, including registering to vote, requesting an absentee ballot, seeing a preview of the ballot, and tracking the ballot in the mail. This website is super handy, not only for the election on November 3rd, but throughout this year and every year. So this is a good thing to keep in your back pocket. It's actually very helpful. Has really easy steps and is meant to help everyone, regardless of their voter experience, and pass it if this is your first time or your 100th time, to be able to vote as quickly and easy as possible. So we're going to go to this website, and then you're going to see a tab saying absentee ballot, and you click that, and then what it's going to do is ask you to, if you can go to the next slide, Mel, put in your information, your name, your birthday, stuff like that, and upload a photo of your voter ID. Then what it does is it sends that request to the Wisconsin government. Or actually, I think it goes to your county clerk's office, and then they will hopefully approve your request for an absentee ballot, and then they'll send it to your house.
Okay, so for filling out your ballot, whether you're filling it out absentee and dropping it off at your local city clerk's office, or you are doing it at the polls on election day, there are a few things that are really important to go over, and the first being knowing who's on your ballot. So when you actually vote, you know who you're going to vote for, and you don't spend too long actually at the polls. So we can go to the next slide, Mel. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the first section is the President of the United States. You can take a screenshot of these, do some research on your own of what candidates represent and who you think best represents your values. The first are the Democratic nominees, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The Republican nominees, which are the incumbent Donald Trump and Mike Pence. There are also Constitution Party, Libertarian Party, and American Solidarity Party that are third-party candidates that are also running, and you can do some research into those at the moment. If you don't feel that any of them represent your values, or you choose not to vote for any of those candidates, you can always write in a candidate, and they will be the people that you are voting for. Section 2, if we go to the next slide, is the representative in Congress for District 2, which is Dane County at the moment. So there are two candidates running against each other, Mark Pocan as the Democratic and Peter Theron as the Republican candidate. Again, you can write in someone on your ballot if you don't wish to vote for either of them. Section 3 and Section 4 depend on the district that you're in within Dane County. So go to this URL right here, insert your zip code and your address, and the myvote.wi.gov will tell you which candidates are running in your district. If we move on to Section 5, it is someone who is running unopposed for Dane County District Attorney, but you always have the option to write in someone. Same with Section 6. If we go on to the next slide, which is the Dane County Clerk, only one candidate who's running unopposed, but you can always write in someone. Again, same for the next couple, which is the Dane County Treasurer, and again, the Dane County Register of Deeds. Now, section 9 and 10 on your ballot represent whether or not you want to vote yes or no on a few things for the Madison Metropolitan School District. There are 2 referendum questions, and you can go to that link to read the full paragraphs all about the referendum. So you can vote yes or no for those. So there are a few important things that we have to remember when returning our ballot. So remember that your ballot must be returned by 8 p.m. on November 3rd, which is next Tuesday, Election Day. Otherwise, it won't be counted. If you are voting absentee, so filling out your ballot at your home, you have to make sure that you're using a dark blue or black pen so that the people can clearly read it. And you also have to make sure that you have a witness who signs the envelope of your ballot, who needs to be a U.S. citizen and at least 18 years old, so that they can tell that it's actually you who is voting. Remember to read all the instructions clearly. Make sure that you're voting for the candidate who you want to represent you. And happy voting in that sense.
Okay, after you filled out your ballot, there's 3 different ways to return it. And then the first one, I believe, is if you don't have a witness. So some notes about a witness is that they must be 18 and a U.S. citizen. And also they can be a family member, so that's okay. But if you are not able to get a witness or feel like you can't safely do so, then you can bring your ballot and your absentee certificate to your city clerk's office or your polling station on election day. An important note, don't fill out your ballot beforehand. Make sure it's blank and then you fill it out there. And then the locations of your city clerk's office can be found through that link. I'm sure it'll be put in the chat or somewhere because it's a really long link. And then I think the second option is dropping it off at a ballot box. And those are like all over the city. I think a lot of them are at fire stations, but there's also one at Elver Park. And then also the specific locations can be found on the same link as the slide before. And then the ballots are collected every day at 5 p.m. So make sure you drop off your ballot sometime before 5 p.m. on Monday, November 2nd, because that's the day before the election. And then I think the last option is there.
Perfect. So the last option is just going to be actually going to the polls on election day, which is next Tuesday, November 3rd. The polls are open until 8 p.m. So on election day. So if you haven't gotten the opportunity to request an absentee ballot, drop it off at one of the locations that Amy mentioned earlier, then you can always go on election day. And remember, in Wisconsin, you can take unpaid time off of work legally to go and vote.
And if you're interested in, make sure that you're checking the status of your ballot to make sure that it's delivered and properly processed. Check it out on myvote.wi.gov to see if your ballot was delivered.
So how to help if you can't vote like me? There's multiple different ways. You can encourage your eligible people to vote. This could be family members, friends, etc. And encourage them to share their voice by voting in the election. You could become a student phone banker, which is spreading awareness to the election to increase voter turnout. And then there are plenty of opportunities that you can find all over the internet, or you could email me if you don't have any that fit your political party and identity. And then finally, you can work the polls on election day. You cannot do this anymore for the presidential election as they are fully staffed, but for local elections, they tend to be understaffed. So keep an eye out for opportunities in future elections.
Awesome. So if you have any questions, go ahead and email jmmgenderequity@gmail.com and we'd be very happy to help you. And happy voting.